Sometimes when you're right in the thick of it, it can be tough to know if you're actually making muscle growth progress or not. When you're brand new to lifting weights, it might be obvious amidst getting significant newbie gains. In that context, you might gain pounds of muscle each month for at least a few months before your progress starts to slow down. As your rate of newbie gains does slow down, however, that's when it becomes tougher to see your muscle growth progress in the mirror, especially for us natural lifters. At that point, the changes you see in the mirror will be less obvious. And as such, you might find yourself second-guessing your rate of progress or wondering if you're even making any progress at all. Rest assured, there are ways of assessing muscle growth progress outside of just through observing what you see day to day in the mirror. In this video, while showing you footage from my latest full body gym workout, I'm going to share with you what are my two favorite ways of assessing muscle growth progress for myself. Hopefully, in sharing them with you, you can use them to assess your own muscle growth progress and get some peace of mind from doing so. Before we get started, if you find this video to be helpful, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. Okay, let's dive in. As a quick preface, building muscle after initially getting your newbie gains is a relatively slow process for us natural lifters. And the process will continue to get slower the longer you stick with it and the more muscular and strong you become. It's the law of diminishing returns. I think this is important to mention to set you with realistic expectations right out of the gate. You might find yourself scrolling the social media pages and profiles of fitness influencers and bodybuilders who have top-tier genetics, who might be taking PEDs, and or who are masters at taking flattering photos by manipulating camera angles and lighting. And thinking to yourself, all whilst viewing these profiles and people, why aren't I building muscle as fast or as much as they are? I think it helps in knowing that those kinds of profiles are often not realistically worth comparing to. For 99% of us who aren't them, muscle growth will happen slow and steady over many years. And shoot, some of those people and profiles are a part of that 99%, having taken them years of consistency to get their great physiques. But since we only get a limited view of what their fitness history and context is like, we might find ourselves making the wrongful assumption that they made progress fast and easily, when indeed it did take them many years of training and eating in a way that's been in alignment with building their physiques. In my opinion, the best thing we can do is to simply acknowledge that building muscle is, for almost everyone, a slow process. And from there, put the blinders on what we see on our socials. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about assessing muscle growth progress. The first of my two favorite ways of reliably tracking muscle growth progress isn't actually through any means of taking body measurements. It's not through tracking scale weight, it's not through measuring girth, and it's not through hopping on something like a DEXA scan machine. It's through tracking lifting performance progress. Plain and simple, if you're getting stronger whilst keeping your exercise technique consistently at a high level, then there's an extremely high probability you're building muscle. Your strength output is unsurprisingly directly correlated with the muscle on your frame. So if your strength is increasing, then your muscles are probably getting bigger too. The most standard way to improve lifting performance progress comes through increasing load and reps. And in some contexts, one way of progressing might be more lucrative than the other. But overall, if you're progressing in your lifts through a combination of those standard means, then you're probably growing. Increasing load and increasing reps aren't the only means of progressing, though. Improving training technique, your level of control, and improving your mind-muscle connection are also means of progressing. Although those are a little bit more difficult to objectively track, you can know that if they are improving over time, then you are probably also building muscle. I'll make a point in saying that from my experience, there are some instances where progressing through load and reps becomes more complicated, like from doing particular movements or training certain muscles, like performing lateral raises for the delts. Eventually, increasing load and reps becomes very tough and perhaps unrealistic at times with an exercise like that. But I found that through refining technique and becoming more skilled at executing reps from that exercise, I've seen some of my best side delt gains. Tracking lifting performance progress is probably my number one favorite way of measuring muscle growth. As noted earlier, muscle growth happens relatively slowly, and since we see ourselves in the mirror every day, it can be very tough to know if we're actually progressing or not. But regardless of what you see in the mirror on a daily, weekly, or even monthly basis, if you're objectively progressing in the gym, you can be pretty confident that you're building muscle, even if it's not super visually obvious at a given time. This segues me into my second favorite way of measuring muscle growth progress, through assessing progress photos. Now, there are several major considerations that ought to be noted when it comes to this one for it to be a truly reliable means of assessing muscle growth progress. The first of these considerations is that the most profound muscle growth changes will be seen over longer periods of time. I'm not talking several weeks. Shoot, for many of us past an intermediate level, I'm not even talking several months. I'm talking more in the window of like at least 6 months or more. Photos taken and assessed over a shorter time frame might be consistent of noticeable changes, yes, but they might also be tougher to spot. And things like differences in photo lighting, camera angles, and exact posing and body positioning can make objectively spotting those changes even tougher. My preference, for example, is to assess after at least 6 months or longer. The second consideration is, as just mentioned, camera lighting, angles, and posing. In order for the photos to be reliably accessible, making sure all of those variables are similar between photos is pretty much a necessity. I think many people underestimate just how much any of those variables can affect the visuals of the photos, and in a way that can skew real muscle growth changes. For example, if the first photos you take consist of lighting in a dark room without much direct light reaching your body, and the second set of photos you take 6 months later consist of natural lighting hitting you from a side angle, the second set of photos will likely make you look significantly more muscular, whether you've actually built much muscle or not. So for that reason, making sure the photo lighting amidst the other variables I've mentioned is the same between photos is very important. And the third consideration, and this is super important in my opinion, is to take into account body fat percentage differences between photos. The way to see the most profound muscle growth differences is through taking photos when at the same or a very similar body fat percentage. If, for example, you build 3 pounds of muscle over 1 year, but your body fat percentage has increased from 15% to 20% between photos, it might be very difficult to see the increase of muscle in those photos. If, however, you gain 3 pounds of muscle over a year and your body fat percentage is similar between photos, the changes will be much more visually apparent. You can use a body fat scanning tool like an in-body machine or a DEXA scan if you want to track your body fat percentage to give you an idea of where you're sitting. Or you could do something like assess your photos whilst at the same body weight rather than body fat percentage many months apart. For example, if you take your first set of photos at 180 pounds, train hard and aim to build muscle for the next year and a half, maybe including both a lean bulk and a cutting phase, and then take your next set of photos at the same body weight, but see some big changes to your level of muscularity, then you know you've built muscle. In that case, it would likely be the case that your body fat percentage would actually be lower in the second set of photos if you look more muscular at the same body weight of your first set of photos. Yeah, there's some serious considerations that ought to be noted when assessing muscle growth progress from photos. But even so, they can still be a reliable means of doing so. After all, one of the primary reasons many of us build muscle in the first place is so we can visually see the changes after all. Usually, the lifting performance progress correlates quite well to the visual changes you see between photos too. For example, if you add 100 pounds to your leg press, executed with great technique of course, then there's a pretty high probability you'll see some bigger quads and adductors in your photos. And there you have it, my 2 favorite ways of assessing muscle growth progress. The first is through tracking lifting performance progress, and the second is through assessing progress photos, whilst keeping in mind the aforementioned considerations that I mentioned earlier. At this point, I'd love to know your feedback. Let me know your questions, comments, and insights in the comment section below. Before this video comes to a close, I want to quickly let you know about the work that I do. When I'm not making YouTube videos or Instagram content, I work full-time as an online physique coach, where I help my clients to accomplish their muscle growth and fat loss goals by optimizing their approach to strength training and nutrition, and I coach them through the process. I've been doing this work for over 7 years and love helping my clients to not only transform their bodies, but ultimately their lives. If you've been considering getting some help with accomplishing your own physique goals, feel free to hit the link in the description below, where you can learn a little bit more about the work that I do and how I can help you. You can even use that link to schedule a free video consultation with me. If you have any questions about my coaching or how I can help you, just email me at sam@jadeathletics.ca. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.